Hello, how are you doing today?
Excellent. Just getting ready to be asked some questions and hopefully provide some answers that will be useful. And how are you doing?
Great. I'm fine, thank you. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Laura and I'm the creator of Mindbookness, which is a new online book club for books about wellness and self-development. So this is why I've decided to have this little chat with Michal, who will tell us about a specific system he has developed for self-development, which is called the Minimalist Journaling System. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the time.
Oh, thank you.
So first of all, if you could perhaps tell me a little bit about yourself and about your partner and how this idea or this passion about journaling started.
It's a good question. It's always this basic but very complicated question because, wow, what am I doing? I'm doing so many things. But what's coming up right now is, well, I work within personal development, which is, of course, a very broad umbrella term that encompasses so many different fields and subjects, but my work mostly involves writing and coaching. I also work with groups of people, and this is recently becoming more and more, well, it's just becoming a more important part of my life. I'm really enjoying the community work and also doing personal development together. I find it very, very powerful, and this whole idea of accountability and team support. So recently, this is a lot of my work. I'm also location independent, so I've been traveling for the last few years together with my partner, with whom we run our business together. Yeah, right now we're in the Azores, which are the islands in the Atlantic Ocean, belonging to Portugal. And we love it. We decided to stay here for a while, so kind of slower down the pace of moving, which we really enjoy. Yeah, that's some of the things. I'm sure there's more. And as for journaling, I think this is a topic, or this is a skill or interest that's been a part of my life for a very, very long time. And I've been journaling on and off for years, kind of since my teenage years, really. And of course, it was a long process until I discovered what kind of journaling works for me. I started with, the diary type of thing, just writing down what's happening. And then when I was traveling, I spent quite a lot of years of my life traveling. So I was writing those kind of travel journals for myself, collecting lots of memories and insights that were coming from my travels. I was hitchhiking mostly, so I had a lot of time just waiting. So that was a perfect opportunity to juggle. And when I got bored or tired of juggling, I would journal. So those two always came together for me during the traveling. And maybe for the last 2 or 3 years, maybe 3 years or 4, something like this. I don't really remember exactly when it started, but I've started noticing journaling it can be more for me, and it just became this very more and more intentional space for personal development. And what I mean by that is it allowed me a place or a space, let's say, to dig deep inside myself, to ask myself questions, or to just explore certain parts of myself, also express some parts of myself, and keep track of what's happening in my life, not necessarily as, micro level, like tracking habits, but more the bigger picture, kind of being aware of what my life is actually all about right now, and how did it change since last year, and what was this transformation. So right now I'm using...
You would say, sorry, perhaps that this idea of keeping a journal may help you maintain your life vision, perhaps.
That makes sense for sure. Yeah, that's actually a very good point. It's certainly a place where I can explore this life vision. going as deep as, let's say, phrasing certain areas or certain life goals, or just keeping them purposefully vague, but just kind of sensing into different things. And yeah, as you say, of course, stay on track towards it just by comparing where I am right now and what have I written where I would like to be, and seeing what is the difference and how much further do I still have to go to get where I thought I wanted to be, where I've written.
Okay, that sounds nice. So what about Sylvia? Can you tell me a little bit about her story? I don't know if she's joining us today, but
yeah, she couldn't unfortunately join. But for her, well, her interests right now, again, there's so many things, but I guess we share the interest for working with personal development and doing lots of self experimenting, but also right now working more with groups and teams of people. We find this kind of work very fulfilling. She's also very much interested in spiritual development and writing. I think this is like her favorite skill that she really likes honing, and she spends a lot of time just devoted to working on that skill. She's now started writing her first fiction book, which is going to be like a long process, but just, testing the waters and exploring how would it feel. Because for most of, the last few years, she's been writing mostly personal development, non-fiction content, with some exceptions as well. We've been traveling together for those few years. We've been together for longer. But at first we're a stationary relationship, just in one place in Scotland, where we first lived for a few years. Yeah, and her background is arts and graphic design. So she's also the person who makes all the illustrations for our work, which I'm a huge fan of, and I always love. I like reading her texts, but then part of me is always like, oh my God, I can't wait for the illustrations, because they're always, for me, they're like the best thing ever. But that's, of course, very personal and very biased thing to say.
Okay, so that's very nice. I think there's a very interesting mix, because we're talking about your perspective and what you needed from a journal and from the writing experience, and then her passion for actual longer writing, what we would call essentially this idea of traditional journaling, right? So how did you put all this together into this mix? I would like to start talking about the system, which is made of tiny little squares that can fit so much information. So perhaps if you can tell me a bit about how it works and what it can do for you, or for whoever wants to start this self-discovery journey through a notebook. That would be nice.
Sure. So yeah, I really like how you described it, that it's just tiny little squares that can fit so much information. And I think this is very true. The basic idea is that there's squares. One square represents one day of your life. Just because it feels, at least for me, like a very tangible, concrete time unit. You wake up, you go to sleep. What happens in between is a day. Very easy to keep track of it, and it's not a man-made concept. It's actually a thing that happens. So the Minimalist Journaling System allows you to fill those squares as you please. So you choose what kind of information you would like to record inside. And that also change along with you, because, we evolve over time. So it's only natural that what is recorded, what is important to us, evolves with us. And what happens after we record those information in squares for a while, we get a very beautiful visual representation of our life that we can scan and understand what's been happening in our life in just a glance. So we basically translate our life into into something tangible and concrete that we can understand. And depending what were those things that we decided to track and focus on, that brings then a lot of insights that we can then act upon. So it's a way of expanding awareness of what's happening in our life, but also because of this awareness, what follows is the focus, right? So bringing attention to very specific parts of our life that maybe, well, are just falling through the cracks. Maybe some habits, maybe some areas, maybe things we would like to bring to our life, but so far it hasn't been happening. So essentially, I guess the system allows you to juggle all those things, right? Habits, relationships, your personal goals, your creative projects, your spiritual development, learning, work, whatever areas or habits or interests do you have, you record them in those tiny squares, takes 30 seconds every day, and you make it tangible and beautiful. And you can see, for example, this is like
Wow.
my recent month, and then zoom out, there's more. And of course, there's pages and pages. So this is it in a nutshell.
Yeah, okay. That's very interesting. What I was telling you about when we were talking earlier is that I decided to start my book club with the best-selling author Ryder Carroll and his book about the bullet journal method. And I think that is pretty much the most popular system right now. I think it has become the most popular one because of its flexibility. So if we had to compare the bullet journal to the minimalist journaling system, what do you think are the advantages and disadvantages from one and the other, and the differences? How can we compare these two ideas?
Well, they're basically different systems that you can record or organize or manage your lives. I've never really did the proper bullet journaling. Somehow it just never felt like this is the approach for me. And the squares just happened for me. It was a natural progression of my journaling practice. So it just kind of evolved with time. But I guess the main differences from what I understand from Ryder Carroll's method is that you have this kind of idea of an index page and a future log, and then you kind of divide your life into different segments, that within those segments, then you take daily notes that you can kind of scan, and just you record things that are happening, tasks, meetings, goals, and then you can kind of transfer information from one month to another, make sure nothing falls through the cracks. So it's more like, it feels to me like it's very tasks oriented. And of course, I know also it's customizable, right? So you can add many different pages. I don't know if this is really just a part of bullet journaling, and what actually makes bullet journaling. Does it the fact that there's bullets in the journal? Because then you can add whatever you want, right? But yeah, I guess the kind of the core thing is that you have this idea of log, and then different kind of segments of your life, and you make bullets that are notes of your things that are happening. With squares, really the only thing that you do is the squares. That's it. And that's the only thing. Well, this system, again, is so customizable. And this is, for example, not just the only journaling practice I'm using, right? So there's very different practices I combine it with, and each serve a very different purpose. But what squares do is basically, it's super simple, because the only thing you need to do every day is you open your journal and you take 30 seconds, maybe up to 5 minutes, if you really want to take your time, to record information in your square. And that's it, pretty much. And what you end up at the end is a reflection of your life. And I guess bullet journal does it in some way as well. You just see the tasks you have done and maybe the meetings that happened, while with the minimalist journaling system, you can also see things like your mood, like all those important events, things that are not maybe so tangible. like, yeah, your emotions, or where kind of your ups and downs in life. But also things like, how the moon affects your well-being and your health, your food, work, and all of this happens on one page. So I think the beauty of this is that it's just so simple. You don't need to flip through your journal and look on the future log and then your tasks and then those bullets and another page. No, everything is in one place.
I see what you mean. I think many people in the bullet journal community have been trying to find different visual systems or different visual spreads to actually track things the way you are suggesting. So what I liked the most about the squares is the idea that I can fit whatever I want inside the same square. When I started bullet journaling for the first time, I was very interested in habit tracking, but then as time went by, I found out that I'm more comfortable doing the habit tracking using an app, because I can focus on 5 different habits and I get a reminder on my phone and I can say, yes, I did that today. And then if I wanted a mood tracker, then I have this only one page on my bullet journal in which I have to color, and using different colors perhaps to symbolize different emotions. But then that's it. I am only tracking my mood. And the idea of these squares is that the square is empty and it is big enough for you to write a couple of words or even to draw some symbols. And inside the same page, you are actually tracking different things. So I could use a line for sleep and then start if I went to the gym and whatever. So I think if we're talking about integrating this idea inside a bullet journal, it would be like a perfect companion for a habit tracker or an everything tracker, and you can use it as a collection. And from my point of view, I think it can fit perfectly in this idea of the bullet journal, and then you can have a spread with squares at the end of each month and take the time every day to fill it as you would do with any other tracker, let's say. So I think it's pretty cool.
I really like what you mentioned, that it's everything tracker. I think that's very much encompasses it. Yeah, you can choose what's there, and also, yes, it is very much compatible with bullet journaling. Like, there is no problem or obstacle in combining both together. Essentially, any kind of journal, even like free form journaling, morning pages, all those kind of practices, I think they're compatible with each other. And also you can use them with digital tools, like you said, like habit trackers that are on your phone, which also make certain things easier. So yeah, I like the possibility of combining all those elements. And I think all of them has some bits and pieces that are the exact things that you need in that specific part of your life, because maybe in a few months you won't anymore and things change, right? But yeah, I like the idea of selecting the best pieces. And you can do that with squares as well. You can keep changing them and changing them. So when I look at my squares today, they look nothing like my squares even 2 months or 3 months ago. I mean, there are similarities, they're still squares. There are some elements that are the same, but a lot of things changed. And how I approach them changed. The same for Sylvia. I know she started in a very different way. What she tracks right now is also completely different, and how she approaches this practice. Yeah. And it's a part of it. It's the beauty of it. It never gets boring.
Yeah, it happens with my bullet journal as well. I think I tried many things on my first journal that were not useful at all for me. It's like, not working, let's skip to the next thing, and you keep trying until you create this kind of hybrid system in which you can journal, track, and write down tasks and pretty much everything, and it's in the end your own mix of many different things. So I really like the idea of seeing the progress and comparing my current journal with the one I had 3 years ago, it's like, woo,
So
which
much changed.
places, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you perhaps tell me about 2 or 3 interesting ways in which people, are using these squares and how they are writing or tracking or recording any specific habits? Or I'm curious to
Sure.
see like different examples.
Yeah. I mean, again, there's so many different ways, and everybody uses it slightly differently. But some things that really stood out for me. So, for example, what I actually adapted from one of the persons I've had this call with a girl who uses the Minimalist Journaling System, and she showed me her squares, and it's like, oh my god, this is perfect. This is exactly what I needed. And I started doing this. So actually, I was showing you my squares, so I can do that again.
Yeah.
So basically, she tracks her mood as a just curve, as a wave during the day. So I started doing that here. That was my last month. So you kind of, I started in the morning, I see how I felt, and then I track, oh, here I didn't feel so well. And then, oh, I was feeling better, and this is how I feel in the evening. So I'm kind of reflecting how my mood was, shifting. But then what I decided, I actually wanted to take it further. So I started painting the upper part of it black. And I just like how it looks visually. So that's one way, So this is what I adapted, inspired by one of the people I've talked with. Another way that I really liked, I've seen one person just drawing the square. So there is no like habits, no information apart from there is a date and an illustration. And I also like that very much. Sometimes I'm using it myself. Most of the days, no, but there are certain days when I just felt like, you know what, I'm just going to draw a tree because I feel like it, and I do that. So I really like that as well. You can just decide that no, this is actually just visual representation of my life. It's not about habits and tracking specific things. Um, Another thing that I kind of hinted on before, but that also I really liked from one person, is tracking the lunar phases, so phases of the moon, and just making a note every time the moon changes. So every day there is like a different graphic representing the state of the moon. And that, I think, especially connected with mood, can be a very interesting way of seeing how the moon affects you, and is there any pattern? Maybe there isn't, but maybe there is. So that's another way. And I guess there's some of the more, let's say, obvious ones, like for example, tracking habits, tracking routines. But what I think makes it really special is, in a difference to habit tracker, when let's say, after a month, you can say that in 30 days you exercised 17 times. Okay, that's interesting. That gives you valuable information. But what interests me the most is what happened on the days that you haven't exercised. And this is really the big question that I would like to get the answer to, because I want to be exercising. So what happened? What are those resistance patterns? And is there anything I can do to tweak them? And what happens in the squares is, because you're tracking many different things, some of them are tangible, like your habits. Have you meditated or not? Some of them are less tangible. How did you feel? And you can do it by a mood graph. You can do it with a number or symbol or an emoji representing your predominant emotion. But also things like your travel, all the different things, you're suddenly starting to see the whole picture. So, okay, I haven't exercised 12 times out of 30. And actually 4 times I traveled that day and I just didn't have time. And 3 times the night before, let's say, I just went to a party and I woke up late. And then the next morning, I just didn't feel like exercising. So that gives you a very tangible information that then you can work with. And how you work with it, of course, it's up to you. But it gives you this very powerful awareness. You understand why certain things are happening and you start noticing patterns, which I think, it's probably the most powerful feature. Now I know a lot of very specific patterns that exist within my life, and how my diet affects my mood, and how exercise affects my diet and health, and all those things, how they connect, what is the connection between my productivity and all those other elements. So it really deepens your self-awareness, and armed with that, you can start taking steps and steps and steps to make changes you want to make.
Okay, thank you. That was interesting. I like the idea of not only having the information, but knowing what to do with it. Otherwise, you're just writing down, yes, I did it, or I didn't, or I slept well, I didn't, and then what's the point of tracking it? Yeah. So yeah, it's nice. So speaking of sitting down and actually writing on the journal, do you think there's an important moment of the day in which this connection with the journal works better? For me, it's well, for me, the two reflections I'm doing daily are the AM and PM reflections. More or less, I had come to this conclusion on myself, and then I also followed the tips and recommendations by Carol in the bullet journal method. And for me, it's perfect. I take my 5 minutes in the morning, then 5 to 10 minutes before I'm going to bed. And then I keep using the journal all the time because, as you said, I use it for meetings, tasks, and everything. But I like having these quiet moments, first thing and last thing in the day, to actually track and plan for the day that is coming, or plan for the future events, see what I missed, write down how I felt, perhaps fill in the trackers and everything. I don't know what your thoughts are on this.
Yeah, I guess my approach is similar. I really treasure journaling in the morning. But then it also has a kind of a condition attached to it. So, well, for the minimalist journaling system on its own, right, as an isolated journaling practice, every day in the morning, I wake up and I write down what number of the day of my life it is. So today I know is that
the date.
Yes, I mean there is a date as well, but I also know that today is 11,479th day of my life. So this is,
wow, I love this idea.
This is what I write in the morning, and I just put a note where how do I feel. So on this one of the edges. Okay. And this is my minimalist journaling system in the morning. And if I remember my dreams, I have a symbol for that because this is one of the things I really want to be paying attention to. So every day I just record how well I remembered my dreams from 0 to lucid dreaming. And this is really it. So it takes like no time, it's 3 seconds. And then in the evening, my minimalist journaling system takes slightly longer. As I said, it's like 30 seconds. Sometimes it's a minute, sometimes it's a bit more. But this is when I kind of reflect on the day itself. And I just kind of add those pieces of information. I draw my mood graph. There are some symbols of things that I'm tracking or I'm recording. I write down the kind of keyword or a key memory of the day, or just kind of a title for this day. So I titled every day essentially. So this is kind of the things I'm doing in the evening. But this is just for my minimalist journaling system, right? But then in the morning, for example, what I found that I really love those days when I wake up extremely early. So like ideal is 4 o'clock. That would be my perfect wake up time. Right now it doesn't really happen for many reasons that I know what they are, because I'm kind of tracking this. Also my sleep time and my wake up time, it's also something I'm recording. But yeah, like right now I'm waking up anytime between 6 and 7, depends on the day. So if I wake up around 6, I have a long time in the morning that I like to spend journaling. And this is, well, it always starts with the minimalist journaling system, but then I go into kind of free journaling. And that means really anything, depends on the day. It's not just like morning pages. It's sometimes I doodle, sometimes I make a mind map, sometimes I'm dumping thoughts that are in my head, sometimes I'm exploring myself by asking difficult questions and going deeper. Sometimes I'm thinking about work. It's just whatever I feel like. There's no pressure, no practice, no attachment to anything. I just spend time with my journal for however I feel like. Sometimes I literally write 3 words. Sometimes I spend a long time and there's many pages at the end. And in the evening, there's actually just my squares. I don't do anything else because my kind of, let's say, more work-related task planning kind of journaling, I also do that in my journal, but I like to do it earlier in the afternoon. So in the evening, I'm not anymore thinking in this kind of logistic planning, you know, because I found if I do that, I struggle to go to sleep. My mind still goes like, you know, 200 miles an hour, especially if I run into a problem or I'm like, you know, a situation that requires me to think it through, then my mind will just, it will go happily for hours instead of sleeping, which I don't like to happen. So basically I always try to finish my work in the afternoon. The last thing I do is to kind of review my progress with tasks, see what still needs done, plan my next day. And then I go for a run or for a swim or something else, for a dance that really cuts my thinking brain. And then it's just relaxing time in the evening. I might journal, sometimes just draw or do this kind of doodling or maybe ask some questions or do some brainstorming. But it's never like an obligation or logistics, you know, like, oh, I need to figure out when I'm going to do this thing, or shit, I need to go to a shop and do this because there's a deadline. If I do this, I know it's not a very good thing for me. So I'm trying to avoid it as much as I possibly can.
Nice, thank you. So, well, you've already talked about the ways in which you're using your squares right now, but I don't know if you could tell me a little bit more about what you are currently tracking.
Sure.
So you mentioned the mood track, and then you're tracking which day of your life it is. I think I'm going to start doing this. I think it's
very interesting because it gives you this twofold perspective. You know, on one hand, it's like, oh, it's 1 out of thousands, so it doesn't really matter. Like if you failed, you know, it's fine because you can just recover the next day. But also, it's very much carpe diem, like, you know, this is not a Tuesday or Wednesday or Saturday. No, this is 11,400 whatever number. It's never gonna happen again, ever. So you better make the best out of it. So that's why I like it. But yeah, it's a fun practice. But okay, so what am I tracking? So I have the date next to each square. This is just practical. I like it. It's useful to then connect things, what are happening. I have the date of my day of my life. Then there is kind of like this more, let's say, spirituality related corner. So this is where I track my dreams and my meditation practice. And then there is another corner, which is more for physical exercise, movement, but also kind of special things that are happening. Also my sexual life. And yeah, that's kind of it. So there's symbols for different things that I mark when they happen, how they happen. Also, when I travel, I record that there. So if I move to another place, I will have a symbol for that. If it's a plane, I usually like draw a little plane symbol. I also like to kind of be aware how many times I flew in a year. Then there is a whole corner for my food. This is something I'm kind of paying close attention. So my default is vegan diet. So if that's what's happening, I don't record anything because that's like my baseline. But then, for example, if I had some kind of animal product, I don't really eat meat like ever for years. But you know, if sometimes I will eat cheese or something like this, I have a symbol for that. Or if I go level up, so I eat just raw. So vegan, but also raw non-processed foods, then I have symbols for that. And then there's some symbols for other things. There are certain substances that I like to track. So that can be, for example, coffee. I don't really drink coffee every day. I try to drink as little as possible. So I have a symbol that indicates, okay, I had the coffee that day. If I overeat, for example, this is also something I track. The glory of emotional eating. I guess it happens to, I know it's one of my problems that I sometimes face. So I always pay attention to that. if I do intermittent fasting, so usually my cutoff point for food is at 5. So if I've been eating after, then I have a symbol for that. So yeah, this sounds like a lot, but on most days they're just empty, you know? So there's like a lot of things I can add and indicate, but yeah, most of the times there's nothing there. And then if I consume alcohol or some other substances, yeah, then I have symbols for them. What else? Then I record again this kind of more special, rare things, like if I had an injury or some kind of, I don't know, allergic reaction, you know, this kind of things, then I would also just write them down. I don't have symbols for that. I just write it down in a special place just to, you know, bring my awareness that, I don't know, this day I injured my ankle, you know, or knee, and then I will just know it's there. Yeah, then I have the keyword or the title of my day, which encompasses what happened, the mood graph, and the time when I go to sleep and I wake up. And yeah, sometimes if I have problems falling asleep or I wake up at night out of nowhere and I cannot fall asleep, I also have a symbol for that. So it's a lot of things, but then it really isn't, because most of the times the squares are either, well, not empty, but half empty. You know, I'll do maybe 2 kinds of exercise, so 2 symbols for that. I will have a symbol for meditation and for my dreams. Then if my diet was, let's say, like very good and I didn't have any unwanted substances, then it's just empty. Then there's just my keyword or like the name of the day and the mood. So I don't think it ever took me more than a minute or 2 to process this. And it's usually much faster. I just like to actually, I think the mood graph is the one that takes the longest, because I really like to think, okay, so I woke up and I was feeling like this, and then what happened? Oh, I went a bit up, but then I was feeling kind of bad, and then I had this conversation that made me feel like this, and then I went for a walk and I was feeling great. And then so I really actually think through this. Before I was doing this, it was just so fast. It was just like pam, 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 pam. Okay, how do I call this day? Like this. Okay, it's done.
I see. So apart from the mood tracker that you're recording in this line, I guess all the other things and icons and words you're writing outside of the actual square, right? Like in the corners?
Yes.
Above the square?
Yes.
Or
there's just one symbol that goes inside if it exists. But apart from that, everything is just around the square. Yeah.
okay, nice. So you are not only using the space inside, but also around the square.
Oh, and what goes inside actually is the title of the day. So this is also inside. So I title my day within the square, and then yeah, everything else is around.
Thank you. It's interesting. I'm really going to stick to the day of my life.
I see that you like this idea.
The number of days in my life, yeah. So finally, we've been talking also about your courses, because you're training and helping, coaching other people about this system and how they can use it in their daily lives to improve any kind of habit, or even just to be more aware of their lives and what they can improve. So perhaps if you can tell me a little bit about how you're working on these courses and what people are learning and how it works.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, there is this specific journaling tool. So Minimalist Journaling System is one of the few courses that we created with Sylvia. And this one focuses specifically, right? The Minimalist Journaling System teaches that, but of course it also encompasses other journaling practices that are kind of additional components that a person can use or not. At the bottom of it, there's always the squares, because it's really the essential part. But this specific course, how we structured it, we turned using squares into a process that goes through some very simple steps that you can follow, and it's really designed to be immediately actionable, like the squares. Like, it has to take no time, because, well, people are busy. We all have things that we want to be doing, and whenever there's, you know, something that feels like it's hard and complicated and takes a long time, it's just too much resistance to start with it. I think this is also why in general building habits is so hard, because we tend to, you know, say, okay, from tomorrow I'm going to meditate and run and do this and do that, and then one day later it's just too much. So we designed it in baby steps, like very small, very small. But at the end of the whole journey, so the course is designed to last 3 months, with just, you do the minimalist journaling system every day. So it takes you up to 5 minutes. And then there's also workshops where we actually come together as a group, and everybody has a possibility to share. We brainstorm, we learn from each other. And my role there with Sylvia is, well, we facilitate, of course, we answer questions, but we're also learning from each other. It's actually quite fascinating that people that come there actually, their ideas are genius. And I'm always so impressed with seeing how people use this system for very different purposes. So yeah, the course is structured around this kind of workshops where we meet every 2 weeks and we help each other to go through this journey. And at the end, we review the whole journey. And then, so basically what happens by the end of 3 months, you have created your minimalist journaling system. You've picked goals you want to work on. You picked certain habits that will help you get there. You actually went through the whole process, including the ups and downs, because it's long enough that it's not just like, hey, I'm doing it. No, but then there's this shitty day when just nothing goes well and you just drop everything and then you pick yourself back again. So this is what's happening in the course. You're going through all of those ups and downs. This is also something we cover in the course. So how to navigate the days when you really don't feel like nothing. And then maybe it's a week when it's just, you know, you don't want to do anything that's healthy. You just want to, I don't know, binge TED Talks, because it's slightly better than binging, you know, YouTube videos or whatever. Anyway, so this is all covered kind of in the course. We go through this journey together, and at the end, you can replicate this as long as you want. You can maintain it for life because you've done it already. You've seen how easy it is, and you just you learn how to customize it for your needs. So at the end, everybody ends up with a slightly different approach, or completely different things, how people track. The squares look completely different. And of course, the results are very different. You know, we had people that applied this to things like losing weight. So that was like the main goal, that they just wanted to lose weight. And it was incredible because it actually happened, and it was a crazy result in 3 months. But also, usually what happens in this process is there's a discovery or a big insight that actually there's something deeper connected to that goal that you've had in the beginning. And this usually becomes like this big thing, big theme that is coming to the surface that then you can start tracking. But yeah, there were things like, you know, people just finding time to finally start writing the book that they want to be writing, and they just never have time for it, or realizing that, yeah, something they were doing is not exactly the best way, and realizing which projects in their life they can just cut because it's just too much. They cannot spread themselves too thin. Or yeah, things like I don't know, we had a person who also managed to like had crazy achievements in terms of becoming much healthier, like, you know, cutting all sorts of processed foods, going vegan, all like there was, I don't know, there was like a list of 7 or 9 things that were, you know, big things that happened within this quick, relatively journey of using the system. So yeah, it can be reused for many different things. Everybody's story is different. And yeah, and it's quite wonderful to see how people apply it and what they're using it for, and learn along this journey of everyone. And yeah, also adapt my own system. You know, I just recently, as I told you, I created this mood graph just because one of the people who's using the system showed me what they're doing, and I was mind blown. So this usually, those aha moments happen during the calls, during the workshops. When we come together, we discuss, we share, and we also have a kind of community platform where people exchange information in between. Yeah, so doing personal development together along a journey, and that's all that's what this course is all about.
Okay, and I see it's 100% online. It has always been. So you are
Yes.
keeping, you are making possible to connect people from all over the world who may have very different goals and backgrounds.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Very
Yeah,
nice.
it's always a very mixed and interesting group of people coming from very different places and wanting to achieve different things. Um, yeah, which is very enriching for everyone, because at the end, it turns out we kind of all struggle with similar things. Even if our goals and circumstances and stories are different, it always comes down to kind of similar things. So we can actually support each other in this journey. And it's beautiful. It's very connecting.
Yeah. Okay, so from my side, I think that would be all, everything I wanted to ask you and discuss today. And I don't know if you would like to share anything else. If not, we've talked quite a lot about the system and about
Yeah.
the bullet journal as well. So it has been very enriching. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much for asking very good questions. I also feel it was very enriching experience for me. And yeah, I don't know, I don't really have anything to ask to add. Journaling is great. Whatever way you choose, just experiment. This is something that I think you mentioned in the beginning that I think is, for me, it's like the most maybe interesting and important thing is that you need to figure out what is the best way for you by doing. Like you can of course learn system A, B, C, D, but at the end of the day, you just need to try one, experiment, feel free
Sure.
to adapt and be playful. So yeah, I think maybe as my final message, I would invite you to try playful journaling. Just don't be afraid of breaking things and changing layouts and turning metaphorically circles into squares and triangles. It really doesn't matter. As long as you get joy and pleasure from it, then this habit can actually bring you results because you will do it. If it's not playful, if it's not fun, if it's just another chore, then one more reason to drop it. So
Sure.
simple
So
as that.
trial and error is the way.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. There's no other way to figure it out.
Completely agree. Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.